So just to give you an agenda for this webinar, basically we're just going to start off by kind of, again, telling you what Roblox is at all. There's a lot to it, and we kind of want to just make sure everyone's on the same page, or at least what, where we're coming from. Then we're going to go over just the basic setup, how you download our creation tools, how you set up accounts, that sort of thing. After that, we're going to go into Team Create, which is a really cool feature of our platform where students can actually collaborate together at the exact same time on the exact same project in real time. We're going to demo that for you so you can get a feel for how that works. Then we're going to talk about how people can actually play their games online. So this is for when they share their games with their parents, or their friends, their classmates, how they can actually play on the platform the things that they've created. Because it's not just a creation tool, it's also, hey, you can actually make things for people to consume and play. Yeah, and then after that, we're just going to go over some of the curriculum that we offer. That's all free for you to use, and we definitely encourage you to take it, run with it, and yeah, teach people how to code, how to make games, how to learn science and engineering, and yeah. So with all that, I have rambled enough for me. So I'm going to hand it off to Genevieve, our senior instructional designer.
All right, so hello everyone again. And I know I saw some familiar names in here, but if you don't know me, my name is Genevieve. I lead the education efforts at Roblox, so I got to start Roblox Education. And I know, once again, that you guys are all here, so you've probably heard of Roblox at least, your local 12-year-old, but you may not actually understand what Roblox is, or you might not understand it's more than just playing games. Roblox is a global platform where millions of people gather together every day to imagine, to create, to make these giant experiences in immersive, user-generated 3D worlds. All the online games that you see on the platform have actually been built by members of the community, and often by people who are in their teens or even younger. Like a lot of times we'll have developers who start in middle school, and we even had one developer who I think he was like 9 years old who made a game just last year to raise social awareness around depression. So this is really amazing stuff. So like I said, everything that you see is made by our community. Okay, so there's two parts people don't usually realize. It's separate but equal parts that work together. The first is the Roblox player. This is where you actually play the games, and this is probably the part you've seen most often when you've witnessed students playing. The next section is actually Roblox Studio. So every single game that you see on the Roblox platform, the Roblox player, was actually made inside of Roblox Studio. This is the tool that is used to create everything. You don't need one, or you don't need one to use the other. Some teachers actually elect to just have Studio if they don't really want their students to get distracted by the player, and the other way around. And we know a lot of people who are like, we want students to be able to play together. It might be a treat, it might be a special occasion, or taking advantage of a lot of the great games that we have where they can learn and explore, and I'll talk more about that later. So you don't need to have both player and studio together for them to work. You can have one or the other if that works better for you in your classroom. All right, so to play Roblox using the Roblox player, it's totally free. You can actually play on any of these platforms. So you got Mac and PC and tablet and iOS, Android, Xbox Live. Even HTC Vive and Oculus, we actually do have some games that you play in VR, and Chromebook. The big difference is in order to build, you can only build on PC or on Mac. So you can't build on Chromebook, but that's a really common question that we get. And you can't build on a tablet. We do strongly recommend having a 2-button mouse with a scroll wheel. I personally can't really use a trackpad. I do actually see some students who are so comfortable with a trackpad they make that work, but I strongly recommend the mouse to make your life easier. And you also have to have a stable internet connection. And once again, these are both free. So when it comes to developing, the only places that you're going to see some small fees are on the sound uploads, and that covers our moderation costs. And then when selling items, so we only take a cut to keep our servers running and keep updating our technology when you make money. We don't make money unless our developers are making money. And as for playing, most of the games by default are free. It's free to create, it's free to publish, it's free to share. But in game, you'll see that some players or some developers are going to offer special in-game items in exchange for Robux. And Robux is our digital currency where you can go to the store and you can buy Robux, or you might get asked by your students, can we have Robux? That's what they're talking about. So that's how our developers are actually able to make their living on Roblox. So any questions so far real quick? I'm gonna pause. Nope, good. All right, I'm gonna keep going. All right, so to create accounts, it's pretty easy. If you come to our next session, I'll actually walk you through how to actually create a game from scratch. You can either just go to roblox.com and you'll create it. If you want to just download Studio, you can go to roblox.com/create. I'm gonna just bring that up real quick. And you just click the Start Creating button, and that'll download Roblox Studio. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to get going. And you can see there's the Roblox Studio icon and the Roblox Player icon. If you don't want them to see the Roblox Player icon, you can easily just delete this one, and it'll be fine. If you have, let's say, like this is actually, I'm gonna bring it over here. This is actually just a file, because you can actually download to a local file. It'll automatically download Roblox Studio in order to open this file. Just a couple little tips and tricks, so it's really easy to get. Okay, so next, let's go talk about accounts and software. So some tips for student accounts, particularly if you're dealing with younger students under the age of 13. We have more restrictions on those accounts. There's fewer words that they're actually able to say to keep them safe, to keep them civil. But you can see and you can check to make sure your students are using an age-appropriate account by looking for this under 13 marker if they are under 13. If they're 13 and over, you're not going to see that. So I can actually show you. You can see it up at the top. See, this is me. I'm over 13, so I've got 13 plus. That's probably really little for you guys to see on screen, but there's a 13 plus. And if they're under 13, you can also encourage parents to enable account restrictions that can limit who can talk to them, what they can play, you know, and you turn off chat if you want to. Although right now, you probably want to keep chat on, but that's sort of up to you. So the next thing I want to show you, we're going to start off by showing you Roblox Studio, where we can actually play and create and collaborate. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what the tools look like and what Lua looks like. And you'll see it looks a lot like Python. Okay, so where people usually start, the first type of project that students of all ages typically create, this is called an obby. So an obby stands for an obstacle course. And what you do is you have to jump from one platform to the next platform. And if you don't do that, then you are able to fall to your doom. So I can go here. All of these parts are actually made here in Roblox Studio. So you can see I've got a little part button here. If you just click it, it makes the part. I can change what kind of part I want. I can change the color. I can change like the materials. So like right here we have colors. Oops, I don't know why I just chose gray. There we go, pink. Material, diamond plate. If you see now it's kind of a pink diamond plate. I can scale that up and down pretty easily. I can throw that in place. If I want to see what my work looks like, it's really, really quick and easy to check my work. It's just clicking this play button. And you can see this is like really where almost every
Looks like Genevieve's audio might have cut out real quick there. Let's give her a second to catch up here. One of the things is that Roblox Studio does have does require an active internet connection, and because it is connecting with our game servers and such.
The gravity
So,
that you see?
oh, there you are, Genevieve. Sorry, you
Oh, no.
you cut out for a bit, so I was just explaining that Roblox does use our internet connection, use an internet connection that is actually pretty important to maintain throughout all this. So between Roblox and Zoom, sometimes things get a little choppy, but it looks like you're back now.
Oh, that's funny. And we've tested this. I've not had any issues with my internet lately.
Yeah, but it looks like, I think the last thing you were talking about was, again, just being able to test out your game just by clicking the play button, and you can move your character around and such, much like you would in the client.
Yeah, and it's really easy to get up and running. The player, like this sort of spawning logic is there by default for you. The gravity's there by default. And it really allows people who are new, that don't have any 3D develop experience or don't have any coding experience to just get up and running, just start building things without having to learn all of that network code first. So I just kind of demonstrated falling. This is a really simple script I'm going to show you in a second. So I click the button, and now I can actually walk on this bridge. If I walk across and I hit one of the red buttons, I fall apart. That is going to be one of students' favorite scripts every time. So these kinds of things are really what your student's going to start at. All right. Now I'm going to show you guys what the scripts look like. So this is Lua. So that bridge button I just showed you guys, where when I touched that button, it made this bridge transparent, or not transparent, I should say, and it also turned on collision. It's like 7 lines of code. So something like this is really achievable even by the ages 10 to 12 age range, where we can teach them a little bit about variables, teach them about properties, as well as here's like using events to fire. So this is what a beginning project looks like. And what's also cool about this is a really great collaborative project that you can do. You can have 3 or 4 students work together and have, like, let's say you have one of these platforms. You give each one of them a starting place, and then they have to work together to create the complete obby. Or with the way that you can divide up some of the code, you can have students work together to each be responsible for a certain script. This one's extremely commented. So you can have, there's multiple scripts, multiple things you can do, and a lot of different opportunities for students to collaborate. Okay, so this is a common beginning project. I'm going to show you guys what an advanced project would look like.
While you're getting that set up, Genevieve, I actually have a question from the audience that was commenting on the Toolbox. Noting that there is definitely a range of quality in the Toolbox. Do you think you might be able to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the Toolbox is great because it gets students really excited. They can just bring in things, and there's helicopters and that kind of stuff, but it can also be distracting. So typically I like to tell students about the Toolbox and then tell them that we're going to use it later. It's not, sometimes you'll hear that oh, there's weird things in the Toolbox. What happens is those pieces in there can have pre-existing scripts. And if the user doesn't know what they are going to do, that can get really confusing. A really classic example I have is there was a game where they had to find these balls, and if they found all 7 balls, then they won the game. And every single time the game was played, it would randomly place where those balls would go, and then they would respawn and disappear, and then reappear somewhere else. A student not knowing that script and what it was trying to do kept being like, where are these magical orbs disappearing to? So it wasn't anything was malicious. Sometimes you might hear oh, it's there's viruses or bugs, and that's actually not what it is. It's not buggy so much as you might not understand what the intent of that particular object can do, and that can be really distracting. I was using trees in my own games, and it was spawning birds. So I was like, where did these dozens of birds come from? My game got flooded by birds. So you can use Toolbox as a way to polish the game, and then I usually have a special lesson where I'll also teach them how to strip those scripts out, because I want to make sure that they are doing their own code, and that's my own preference.
Right, and if I can just add on to that, just from a product side of Roblox, again, the the question was also kind of around like security of that and stuff and
Oh, yeah.
scripts, because again, all of these things in the toolbox can have scripts which run live code in the game. Sometimes there may be malicious things in there. Yes, we are working on the platform side to help identify those things easier. We already have some systems in place to clean those up. But really kind of the best way is kind of what Genevieve was talking about. Quite often what I recommend for developers and students is, feel free to open the scripts to try to get an understanding, see what they do. But by and large, I like to use the toolbox mainly for the visual aspects and for props and for kind of getting something started. But typically I like my students and devs to kind of start working on their own code, or at least adapting code that they know what it does. But we also are rolling out more features for security, more ways for you to inspect models from the toolbox before you insert them, so you can know exactly what you're getting. So it's not just blindly, I'm going to drag this in and hope that this is okay. So again, on the veins of security and making sure things run smoothly, that is something that, as on the product side, we're actively working on and will continue to do so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really what it is. Most of the time I find what's in there isn't malicious. It's just unknown what that script is supposed to do. And that causes, I think, more issues than anything. So I just teach them to strip it out, and I make it an actual lesson, because there's a lot of really fun stuff in the toolbox. All right, so this is an example of actually what a more advanced game could look like. So this game was actually created by a team of developers. I think there was like 4 or 5 of us on this. So I got to help out. Peter, who's going to assist me in a second, he got to help out with it. And you can see here we've got terrain, we've got like this beautiful waterfall. The train was all built in Roblox Studio. A lot of things like this giant crane back here was also built in Roblox Studio. But then these developers also brought in assets from Blender. So if you're doing a more advanced game development class, you can actually do a complete pipeline when it comes to assets, bringing them in from Maya or for Blender, and then working with them, as well as bringing in textures from things like Photoshop. So you can work with what's in the game. Like you can see all of this terrain in the background was built in Studio, but the plants were built with a combination of Blender, and then we brought in a texture from outside. And then what's great is that it's talking about, this is a collaborative process. So you can see if you want to turn on Team Create, you can see there's, if you go to View, get Team Create, it'll turn on Team Create. And you can see back here, you see Budget Fox, he's sort of working on things. So I can see what he's doing in real time. So if you want to like plant some terrain, like he just did that because I told him to do something real quick, showing. So I can actually see what people are doing. You can actually have a huge number of people working together. I, for manageability's sake, like to keep it to about 4 to 5, because that seems to be a manageable team size. There's not too many cooks stepping on each other's toes. And you can get a lot done with that amount of stuff. And I can, as he's working, I can pull up like the terrain editor, and I can work at the exact same time to edit that terrain. I can paint it if I want to. Let's see, I'm gonna actually bring up my tools here. So I actually want to do snow, or he's doing snow, and maybe paint some lava. So like we can be working together at the same time in the same area. And that is true of the scripts as well. So we do actually have collaborative editing. And this is a great example, actually, of what a script can look like. So I showed you some really simple, like 7-line scripts and 10-line scripts, but this is a full-fledged development program. So like some of these scripts, and right here you can see, actually I'm gonna close out. I was gonna actually show you in a second. We have really great organization to teaching concepts that are important about modular coding when it comes to creating abstractions, when it comes to creating algorithms, having several functions that can act, and classes and objects that could work together. This can go the entire way, which is also why we talk about, like, yeah, it's great for younger students who want to learn how to build. It's also great for even high school or for a college level program class. Like what they can do in here, if you can think of it, then you can do it. You can change every single aspect of Roblox Studio, from the gravity to the lighting to the terrain to what colors are painted on the terrain, the more that you get comfortable with Studio, the more that you can modify it. Any questions so far just about like collaboration and how Roblox Studio works for Team Create?
While we're waiting for those, Genevieve, I think it would also be good to bring up, again, bring back to security and safety, assets that you import. So through like Blender. So if I was to import animations or images or sounds, can you speak to that process a little bit in terms of like how we moderate and such?
Oh, yeah. Every single thing that gets brought in from the outside does get moderated. So I brought up sounds. That means an actual human being is going to listen to that sound for moderation. But everything else, even like images, we have a team of both humans who will look at everything that's on it, as well as really like cutting edge AI and machine learning technology in terms of making sure that we can detect what is going on behind the scenes. I would say safety and our moderation teams is absolutely our largest team, and it's where we actually put like, I would say the most investment when it comes to our technology in terms of what we do together. When you bring in an object from Maya, because I do this all the time, my background is using Maya originally, I actually didn't even realize it was moderated at first because they're so fast. So sometimes you might see a slight lag, we're talking seconds, if they're checking, and they'll also check to make sure that, if you're bringing in an image, like I once accidentally uploaded a receipt of mine as a texture for an object, and that got moderated because they're like, no personal information. And I was like, oh, well, thank you for moderating that. I really appreciated that. But just so you know, like they're definitely checking, but it's so fast that I didn't even realize when I was first doing this that they were moderating the objects that you bring in too.
We have a really good question here, Genevieve, that I think we should talk to. It comes from Maria. How to set up a remote session for first-time students who have never used Roblox?
Yeah, so once again, I think the first things you're going to want to do is come back to making an account. So I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second. Well, never mind. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is like determine your tools. If you're using something like Zoom, you're probably going to have to show them, how to make an account. Making sure that, giving them guidelines about what's appropriate naming. And then from there, like you're going to have to act as the facilitator to create friends. And that's actually one nice thing about these team create objects. Like if you want to be the owner, if you know what teams are, I would suggest like dividing the students up by yourself or whatever works for your class. I typically like to divide my students rather than having them figure out their teams. Then you can invite that player to come and join. So if I go back, I'm actually go back to my screen share just to show you again like how really easy it is to bring people in. So this is, so I pulled in Peter earlier, but if I want to go and add more people, then all I have to do is click on game settings, and then I'm going to click on permissions. And then we can see like here, I've invited Budget Fox. He can edit. Maybe I don't want him to edit. Maybe I just want him to come check out my work while I'm, feeling insecure about things. I'm going to put him back to edit. And I can actually also look up people as well. I'm just going to, Coefficients is actually a friend of mine that I thought of just because I can't spell Euriston Sparks. So this is the first name I could think of that I could spell. If I were to add him in it as I'm looking for it, then it actually, once again, I just hit play or edit and say what they want to do. So once you know their username, you just need to be able to look it up and you can add them to your game. And I would actually suggest taking advantage of something like Zoom, so you could share and have them share their screens. And then if you're in this game as well, then you can actually also see what they're doing. You can be opening up the scripts and taking a look at it, and you can see the real-time actions of of different people's games. So you can pop in and out of their games as you want. Does that help?
Yeah, and if you have further questions, yeah, please feel free to bring it up. Yeah, and again, we'll also have open questions at the end. But yeah, I think that sounded good, Genevieve.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, I'm actually discard the changes. So I didn't quick save. I didn't actually want coefficients to come edit my game. And if for some reason I don't want to allow Budget Fox to come and make changes to my game anymore, I can also disable team creates because I'm still the owner of my game. So you can bring people in. Like I said, a really great way to do this is to like invite people to play, to come check out your game if you just want to have them play it. All right, so let me actually go back to my notes real quick. So you can build together, you can script together, you can play together. I showed you guys team creates. It's really pretty easy. You create a game, click publish, and then you just turn on team create, and then you can go to that game settings tab to actually invite people to come and edit and play with you. Oh, one thing, it can be really helpful. You can turn on chat or you cannot turn on chat. So when I had my session up with Budget Fox, by default, I didn't have the chat turned on. But since we're working together, it'll actually probably be helpful to have chat. So I could turn on chat. And this is exclusive to who is in that team creates party together. It's not like they can chat with any of their friends. It's only who's in that particular team create invite. That's what that chat is for. So it's different than our platform chat.
Yeah. And then also another good point, just wanted to reiterate through some offline chat around doing this remotely. Again, using tools like Zoom, using remote sharing things, especially when you can share your screen to help walk people through the process, just so they know where they're looking for which button and stuff like that. Again, we try to make things like the login and installation process pretty straightforward. But yeah, I definitely highly recommend doing some kinds of screen sharing, showing your desktop, walking them through it, and actually showing them what you're doing as you're talking about it. That we found that to be very useful when dealing with this remotely.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so playing together online. So I want to talk about whether or not you're playing on the player or if you're working together and playing someone's game that they've made in your classroom. You should always start off with like, what is appropriate behavior? And what do you do when you see inappropriate behavior in each other, you know, or towards each other? So when it comes to playing each other's games, something that's not always as obvious is you want them to be able to give each other feedback, but there's a big difference between being like, hey, I think it would be really awesome if you added more traps over in this section, or I think this section is too difficult. Could you make it a little bit easier? You know, compared to slamming each other's games. And they know what that sounds like. So I like to personally have some open-ended conversations here, you know, starting like, hey, what's an example of what not to say about each other's games? You know, how do you actually give each other feedback? And then for me, it's really important to have this process to start really teaching that design thinking mentality when it comes to iteration. So you take in the feedback and then improve, which is useful no matter what they go on to do in life, whether they go on to become an artist or an engineer or a scientist. Like the ability to give and receive feedback is so important. So that's just like playing and testing each other's games. How do you actually talk about each other's games? You never say someone's game is awful. You say like, hey, I think it would be, you know, great if you did this. So if you're going to test each other's games in an online situation, you can, if they're in the team together, you could do team tests. So this, if you're on like the home tab, or you can also see the game settings, there's a team test section. You can also actually test it just like individually if you wanted to, but just like team test would test for everyone who's playing right then and there. If you want to perhaps, maybe you've made a game or you want someone outside of the team create section to play it as well, you go back to that game settings and that permission section, and you can select friends or private. So by default, once you publish a game, and publishing it to the cloud just saves it, it's private. That means only developers who are working on the game can play it, but you can also open it up. So if I go back to my example here, I can go back to game settings. If I click permissions, who can play this game? Is it public, so anyone on Roblox can play it? Is it just my friends that can play it? Or is it only developers of the game that can play it? So only people that I added earlier, the collaborators, can play it. That's a good way to work on this. Yeah, and then as you can see, there's some, a great place you can put in the name and the description and the game icons, and have like a lot of fun teaching branding and teaching like a little bit of entrepreneurship here. Like, how can you make a game icon that's really just, exciting and gets people who want to play? What's a good description of your game? What's a good name for your game? Awesome game is not like the best game. Jim's game is not the most, like exciting name. There's only one exception to that, and that's Gary's Mod. If it's not Gary's Mod, you shouldn't just call it like a name. So there. All right. So I think that's what I want to cover there. But if it's not a game that you or someone in your classroom has created, so there's other ways you can play together. So like right now we have this really great Learn and Explore game sorts that has a curated list of games that allow players to explore new places. They can learn new skills. They can get excited about STEM. So there's a wide range of games here in this Learn and Explore sort. I think I have it up right here. Hold on a second. Yeah. So we have historical reenactments, like of the Titanic. We have a hurricane simulator that's scientifically accurate. There is also like dinosaur simulator. There's a bird simulator. Like for the bird simulator, you actually have to learn how to fly, as well as you can go and do like a virtual field trip to someplace like Paris. Or a lot of these other ones where you get the experience of like everyone hops on a plane together. And then like you go and visit places around the world. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do, both for like learning and exploration sort of point of view, or if you want to just like have like a special treat. And one way that I recommend doing that is you can just have people jump in together, and if you're friends, it'll probably put you together, but there's no guarantee. If you want to be guaranteed to actually have a chance to be in the same server, that is when you might want to take advantage of, I'll come back to that, VIP servers. And those are enabled by the developer. So most of our top games have VIP servers. They do vary in price. It's usually like a small fee in terms of Robux, and the number of players vary per server. But that is one way you can guarantee that everyone's together. And there's actually a lot more people who are doing that right now as like a special treat. Like they can be wonderful alternatives for celebrating occasions like birthdays right now, or graduation, or if you just like want everyone to have a breather type moment and just relax and play in classrooms. Games like super fun Mega Obby. There's also epic mini games. So there's a lot of good games that are like appropriate for students if you just want to give them a breather to socialize, because socialization is also a really important part of the classroom that they're missing right now. Once again, anytime that I work with students when it comes to online, like before I go online with them, I have that conversation. I try to let them lead that conversation about like what is appropriate behavior. What do you see when you see inappropriate behavior? I want to give them the tools to be responsible digital citizens online. And also, how do they deal with anything that's directed towards them, if it's bullying or whatever. So, also we have a lot of great reporting tools. And just so you know, Laura Higgins next week is going to talk a lot more about this subject, but I just think it's so important that I want to also mention it and bring it up. So I cannot stress enough, like, let your students lead conversations and sort of role play about, like, what do you see? Like, what if someone's bullying you? What if someone makes fun of your avatar? What do you do? And I usually, like, my main response is, like, you don't engage with bullies. Don't take it personally, like that kind of thing. And then you can report inappropriate behavior.
We do have some questions, Genevieve, that I think would be interesting. That comes from Bianca,
Mm-hmm.
and this is related, I think, to the game Sort. She had a couple questions. One, she was wondering if you happen to know of any of those games, perhaps in that Sort. I haven't explored it thoroughly myself, but she's wondering if you had any particular recommendations for games that had building and creation that also has private servers.
You know,
Do you happen to know of any, or do you suggest just exploring them to see which ones have VIP available?
I actually don't know straight off the top of my head which one of these have private servers. I know some of the big ones like Board Life do. I'm pretty sure Tree Planting Simulator does. So that's something that's slightly more advanced. And some of these, and just, like, most of these games, when I was talking earlier about how they're made by young people in high school and middle school, the majority of the games on this sort are made in that age range. Tree Planting Simulator is one that's made by a slightly older group. They're mostly college or fresh out of college, but they all started when they were much younger. Hold on, let me think. I think Build a Boat for Treasure, and where's the plane one? Plane Crazy. I think Plane Crazy is really fun because it talks about density as well as, like, having to find, like, the center of mass to make, like, games fly. Oh, and if you want to see if something has a VIP server, you can see it in this section. So when you go to the game page, if you scroll down, you'll get to learn a little about who is this game, as well as, like, what is the game about. And then if you can or cannot create a VIP server. So most of the VIP servers, like 10 Robux is like the equivalent of a cent, I want to say. It's not much. Most of them are very, very reasonably priced, and the price is set by the developer of the game. Yeah, Plane Crazy is fun. Build a Ship. So it's another good one. I think Bird Simulator. Yeah, Bird Simulator. I like Bird Simulator. It actually calls out, like, what each specific type of bird is, as well as, like, where you can find them in nature. And it has some of the most fun flying mechanics I've ever played with. Like, I really had a peaceful, like, zen time just flapping wings and then soaring, and then occasionally you have to, like, catch something. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, one good question I think is important to address was brought up by Othmane. I apologize if I mispronounced that. But they were asking about games that sell things for real money, so like pets or knives, or I'm assuming skins or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking if they're breaking any Roblox rules by doing that.
Selling for real money. So you can only sell things for Robux in the catalog. So if they're selling things for real money, like, I don't know how that would even work.
Yeah, I would say in terms of our terms of service, if they are somehow finagling it to do it with real world currency, I would say that is definitely against our rules. I would encourage you to report that. Otherwise, if they are selling things with Roblox and our digital currency, that is absolutely something that we want them to do, and that we definitely encourage them to do, because that is how our whole economy works. I mean, we don't make money through advertising or other traditional, like, website means. We rely on developers to sell things in their games to players. And again, just to reiterate, that is actually a career for many of our developers, because one of the things you can do with our digital currency is, again, cash out for real currency at the end of the day. So again, this is a viable career for many of our developers on the platform. And again, we do think this is a great way to teach entrepreneurship to students, because day one, your students can be doing that if they want to.
Yeah. And this game right here, Bird Simulator, is actually an excellent example of it. Arithia, She is one of the most successful developers on the platform. Her work is highly sought over when it comes, or sought for when it comes to avatars. Her games are known for being beautiful. She is making, I would say, far more than anyone else that, in this room, most likely. She's very successful. She's probably fresh out of college. I actually don't know how old she is actually, but she first made this game in 2015. So my guess is that she was definitely early teens when she made this game. So I actually don't know how old she is. But like, just to get your start on something like this, to make something that you enjoy, and then to start learning about like, how do you actually put in objects, like how do you do so responsibly, to create a game loop that would bring players back. We want them to have careers in game development or anything else. Oh, Tree Simulator actually is another great example where they actually use the profits of their game partially towards planting trees. And if you go into the game, it'll actually have a counter of like how many trees that they've planted. Any other questions right now?
Let's see. It looks like we've got a couple of other questions here.
It looks like about 10 minutes we've got about.
Oh yeah. You want to continue on, Genevieve? Peter and I will handle these questions, and we can maybe do some open Q&A.
So I'm going to talk about 5 minutes, then I'll leave 5 minutes to make sure that we have time to close up. Real quickly, I just want to chat about all of our resources. So we have about 100 hours of educational content, all of it shared out under the Creative Commons license, meaning it's free for anyone to use. You can upload it into your own LMS. You can make PDFs of it that we've seen. You can modify it and tailor it as fits your classroom. The only thing that you can't do is to print it out word for word, picture for picture, and sell that for profit. But if you're a camp where you like modify it or elaborate on it, then you can absolutely use it. All of our lesson plans and tutorials and resources, they're all on our education hub. I'll give you the website in a second. And we were just recognized by ISTE in over 17 standards, both for foundational learning and for applied learning. The content that we have focuses really heavily on code fundamentals, computer science, as well as game development and entrepreneurship. But that doesn't mean that you can't bring in history, you can't bring in English and science. We've actually seen that in the field and get anecdotes of that quite a bit. And if you do something like that, we'd love to hear, and we'd love for you to share it with the community. It just happens to be that the content that we've created so far has concentrated mainly on computer science, as well as a couple other things. Game development. So if you want to find, like I said, we have curated lesson plans, education.roblox.com/resources/Roblox remote. We have some curated lessons that we recommend for different age groups and for different amounts of time. So something like the story game one, it's easily adaptable for like an hour of code type lesson. It's more of like a taster in terms of what you can do. Where if you wanted them to really get in, start learning how to code from scratch, something like Game Developer 101 or the coding fundamentals are going to be good starting places for that. All right, so we're at 23. Education.com or roblox.com/resources. So if you go to our website, see everything that we have so far, you can just click on content and you can scroll and you can see all of our tutorials. The one that I really, really want to call out is our Code Fundamental series, because it's got so much content on it that's not immediately obvious until you start clicking. So I would say like up here is like if you have younger students, but we're also bringing in more advanced concepts such as abstractions and algorithms if you're working with older students. And then once again, Laura Higgins, if you're going to come back for the digital civility webinar, is going to talk a lot more about this, but I think it's really important to stress we care about safety of our players and of our students. So we're actually part of a safety advisory board, And we're also certified and consistently audited by Kids Safety. That's an FTC approved COPPA compliancy program who ensures that we remain COPPA compliant and we protect the PII of all of our kids under 13. We also, GDPR, and as we're a global company, so as all of these new measures come up, across the world, then we comply with them as well. Our care and safety team has relationships with NCMEC, local police authorities, international municipalities. We want to make sure that we have the ability to report issues quickly. So safety is always our #1 priority. Once again, Laura can talk to you all day about empowering students to become caring, compassionate digital citizens, and she can talk much more about a lot of our digital civility and safety practices. I just want to make sure that that gets mentioned today as well. Okay, so if you want more information, you can definitely find at education.roblox.com. Follow us on Twitter if you're not already doing so. You can go to @roblox.edu. If you are doing something in class, go ahead, tag us in it. We love seeing it. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to education@roblox.com. Okay, we got 5 minutes left.
Yeah. So I think right for now, we've gotten a couple questions in, but yeah, I definitely want to open the floor to any kind of open Q&A. So yeah, if you want to ask a question directly to have a bit of a dialogue, again, we only have a couple minutes left, but feel free to use the raise your hand feature, and yeah, maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions, Genevieve.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, so it looks like we've got a couple folks here. Looks like Tony Blackman. Here you go. Oop, or except you, I think you can, or did I enable someone?
Stop share, I think. That worked. I don't know. I'm gonna stop
Oh,
sharing.
it looks like I clicked on someone else, but Othman, you had your hand up. Please, go ahead.
Oh, I can't hear you, Tony.
Yeah, I'm afraid we can't hear you, friend. Looks like you asked your question in chat. Let's see. So that's a game called Roblox High School. Yeah, so, and he was mentioning that there's some games out there that do have exploits and hacks and things like that. Yeah, again, that's something to be aware of. We do have a very active, again, I just want to reiterate, we do have a very active moderation team. If you do come across a game that you feel has a bad player in it or is made by a bad developer who's doing something malicious or untoward, please, again, we do our best to do active moderation. We do also rely on our community and folks like you to let us know about things so that we can take appropriate action to take care of it.
Yeah, I don't think I can show it at the moment because I'm afraid for the sake of my internet connection as I stream. But if you press escape as you're playing, that'll bring up the reporting menu as well. So then you can report what's going on. And, I would say we are always looking for any type of exploit. We're always we're staying on the cutting edge of technology, but of course things are going to come up. And we want to stay ahead of that as much as possible.
Yeah, so someone also asked, I think this is an interesting question from Lance, said, how has Roblox been utilized for teaching live in a Roblox game? Also gives a shout out to Peter. I don't know, Genevieve, do you know of any instances of people teaching Roblox live? I know that we don't really have any kind of live stream voice chat at the moment, although I think that's something we might be looking into.
What's funny is that there are students who actually do this. There's a game that didn't make it onto the Learn and Explore sort because it's only active 2 hours a day. And in that game, every day that person comes and runs a tutoring session. And they'll teach typically typical math and English sort of elementary level subjects. So it is something I've seen happen. And they use the game page to say hey, this is my schedule. This is when the game is going to be live. So they use the tools that I showed you before about privacy and playing. So they put up and take down their game as their tutoring schedule comes up. Another example that I see is there's a VR game where they've used some of the VR capabilities just for building and exploration. And I think as this situation goes on, they're going to see a lot more creative uses. We're definitely seeing people come in and just using it as like a relaxing area, to throwing birthday parties, as I mentioned, like that is happening, having special occasions, or just as an opportunity to socialize. And we're looking into like how we can keep facilitating that. So.
First, again, I just really want to thank all of you for participating with us today. We're really excited to get this series out. And again, we hope that this has been useful for you. And again, we do have more sessions coming up in the future. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about digital civility with Laura Haynes. Our whole schedule is up on education.roblox.com. Please, I would definitely encourage you to come back if you like, if you enjoyed this. If you have any colleagues or anyone else you know who you think might benefit from this or might be interested, please feel free to share that with them.